Hey everybody, welcome back. Psychic Eric here. Acid Archives Diaries number 24. Here we go. Got another one for you, and this is one compared to the last three that we did, Concern, Popcorn Blizzard, and Shira Small. This is one of the more common records you could probably find at your local record shop from the Acid Archives. And by common, I mean that in a pretty loose term. It's certainly one that you can probably find out there. I think there has been a copy or two found in Lincoln and Omaha that I've discovered. But this was an online pickup years ago, and today we're talking about the album and band Fear Itself. Dates are a little varied on this one online. Some say 1968, some say 69. Not really sure. There's not an exact date on all the different sources I look at. But Fear Itself, so they basically formed from Atlanta, Georgia. I want to say around 1967, so pretty early. And they got the contract from Dot Records somehow, landed a deal there, and relocated to NYC to get this recorded. Produced by the famous Tom Wilson, who's produced several MGM, Verve titles especially. Comes to mind when I think of that label. But he's produced several things. And so yeah, they relocated to New York, and I think they also got some gigs at Fillmore East around this time. And shortly after this album came out, I think around, like I said, maybe late 68, coming into 69, I'm not exactly sure. But the bass player, Paul Albom, apparently got in a driving accident and then got killed. It's kind of tragic, man. He's pretty young. And a really weird, interesting connection I just found out, too. Paul Albom was actually the same bass player on an album we just talked about, Chrysalis, on MGM. And I'm pretty sure it's this fella here, because he looks kind of similar to the guy on the Chrysalis front cover, in between the little weed there on the cover. But yeah, it's pretty tragic, though. I think they were probably together only a year or so. And but the main star of this record is Ellen McElwain, who's the lead vocalist. I think she's the rhythm guitarist, I think. Let me check real quick. Yeah, rhythm guitar and harp and organ. And there is a harmonica on this record. It doesn't say harmonica, but I'm pretty sure she plays that on the first track, Crawling Kingsnake, which is a John Lee Hooker composition. Do a pretty solid job of that. The album kind of opens up really wacky to me. Got these really angular, especially the drumming on here. Who's the drummer? Bill McCord. He is a drum fill machine. And I'm kind of the same way. When I play drums, I love to get those drum fills in, and I always land kind of sloppily, but yeah, the drumming on here could have been a little tighter. There's a little too much toms going on, along with the snare. And the way he's approaching it too, it's got this very weird, angular kind of rhythm to it, but I kind of dig it for that, just for its kind of offbeat patterns that he's doing, especially at the beginning of this record, like I said, the first track. And then probably my favorite track on the whole album, Underground River, opens up with this kind of heartbeat, kind of moving along the first, 40 seconds or so. And then it just abruptly cuts off once they get into the next verse, which is kind of strange they let it linger on that long. But it's got an interesting kind of moodiness about it. I just kind of like where the track goes and some of the soloing on there. The highs and lows kind of builds up kind of slowly. Then you got tracks like Bowed Up and Furzuki, kind of shorter tracks that make it find their way here. It feels like they kind of just continually move along, leading up to the final track on side one, In My Time of Dying, which has some pretty cool vocal delays. It's got a drum solo in there, and again, Mr. Bill McCord, just as a drum fill machine, he just kind of pummeling away, kind of doing these Buddy Rich things that we've all heard on these drum solos, and doesn't really go anywhere. It's an interesting rendition. I think it's a traditional song, right? My Time of Dying. There are definitely some traditional and cover songs on here, but I think the rest are originals done by Ellen McElwain. And then they open up side 2 with The Letter. We just talked about that track. I just picked up the original single, and I think that track, yeah, it's only lasts 2 minutes. Kind of feels unnecessary. They don't really spice it up or anything. Again, kind of feels very samey as we move along. A lot of the songs do sound alike. And then the next track, Mossy Dream. Also, I think it's one of the singles off of here. I think it only got released maybe overseas. It's got a cool kind of picture art with that one too. I like the font design on that. And it feels the most polished. It doesn't sound the most raw compared to the other tracks on here. Billie Jean, kind of a filler track, pretty forgettable for me. And then it concludes on a really ripping version of Born Under a Bad Sign, which I think is definitely a highlight off of here. And I haven't even really mentioned the styles, so it's very much coming from a central blues rock kind of vein for the most part, and maybe that's one of the reasons I don't bring this album up too much. As you guys know, not huge on blues rock. Unless done right, you know, if it's part of the counterculture, depending on how they use the blues chords and the blues changes. This one's pretty strange in itself, that the way it's kind of sloppy, a lot like Maximilian that we just talked about in the Diaries. I just kind of like where they go with the blues changes, but it's not all necessarily good, but I kind of like it for that. But if I had to, you know, suggest some tracks to check out, maybe Underground River and maybe Mossy Dream, and then Born Under a Bad Sign might be the 3 that you want to check out if you're interested, or just start from the full album upload, that there's plenty of them on YouTube as well. So, a Rasputin production. I thought there was something else I was going to mention about this group too. Well, Ellen, she would later go on to do some solo albums, I think on Polydor. I've definitely seen her albums around. Pretty good guitarist. The one thing about this record that, you know, might be irritating for some, I'm not the biggest fan of it. She's got this very kind of operatic, husky vocal delivery. Not so much in the way of Janis. I'd probably prefer this over Janis, but it's more, like I said, kind of shaky, and finish singing, she'll always go, all right, yeah, all right, yeah. You know, a lot of those kind of things at the end of the verses. Otherwise, man, it's not one I revisit all the time, but it's a keeper for certain reasons, you know. Kind of like this photo shoot too. It's simplistic, but it just creates that that scenery there. I love it. I always thought this dude was naked on the horse, but like on further investigation, once you look a little closer, it's not the case. But hey, I'm just bringing it up. It's those things I notice, man. And then this is got the original inner sleeve here. More of What Dot's Got. It's got some pretty interesting albums on here. You got Mount Rushmore, Val Stockleen, Colors, Rosemary's Baby soundtrack, Barbarella, Leonard Nimoy. And then you got Peppermint Trolley Company, but that was on Atco, which was a sub-label through Paramount. And pretty nice copy. So this is one that you can still find probably if you wait a while, between 20 to 40 bucks. I think people have really been price gouging the hell out of this over the years, you know, 40 bucks and up. It really shouldn't be that high. I mean, at the end of the day, this is still like a $20 album, ideally, for what it offers. Yeah, just wanted to do a little more semi-common piece for the Acid Archive entry. Something they can still find. I think a lot of you guys will like this out there. So definitely seek it out if you're interested and you find it for cheap. Let's read what the Acid Archive says. I did not bring my book with me. Gotta go get it. All right, Fear Itself, Atlanta, Georgia. Here it claims it 1969, gatefold. And then at this time, it says 2007, A World in Sound reissue. I was not aware of that, and CD reissue. Otherwise, I guess I didn't research on what else is out there for reissues nowadays. But like I said, you can pick the originals up pretty easily if you hunt them down. And here it says, this is from Patrick Lombard. Overlooked Big Brother and Janice style psych rock. LP with wailing femme vocals, crude guitar leads, and 2 very good acid freakout tracks, the main attraction. It attains a genuine intensity in places, and the band definitely sounds more at home among freaks than teeny boppers. 3 unimaginative blues and soul covers keeps this from being a classic. This is Ellen McElwain's first recording, and one of the very few female-led rock bands of the time. She would later make her name as a bluesy folk artist who played a mean slide guitar. Yeah, kind of known for the slide guitar as well. But here she tried to get heavy. A French pressing with a different sleeve exists. Oh yeah, I think they inverted the gatefold. I think the gatefold's actually the front cover on that release. This is like Fear Itself on the top with their picture. And yeah, so as far as the trip meter goes, I mean, there's, like I mentioned earlier, there's some vocal delays, sometimes guitar delays as well, but not necessarily anything super tripped out. Mossy Dream, like I mentioned, is kind of more polished, and it's got the only organ leads that I can recall on that one. But otherwise, it's kind of mixed like a psych record, but yeah, very much blues rock, kind of a heavier edge to the backing of this. And the backing track is very good if you can just get past her vocals. I mean, otherwise, musically, a little on the sloppy edge, but it's still fun for what it is. So there you have it, Fear Itself. And there's more to come with the Dot label. Saying it right now, that's the next label spotlight. I'm going to do like the top 5 because there's not necessarily as many favorites as, say, MGM or Capitol, Uni. I just kind of narrowed it down top 5. So get ready for that one. Maybe next week. We shall see. Well, actually, I'm going to have some vacation time next week, so I may not get to it. I mean, I'm going to spend vacation time elsewhere in my private time, but more things to come. So look out for Acid Archives Diaries number 25. Number 25 already. I'm loving it. So take care. We shall see you soon.